Yeah, thanks guys for watching again, and it's again a live stream. And the good thing is, what I mentioned is also last week. Each time when we did a live stream, afterwards you always can find them back in the playlist of the Rob Harpen YouTube channel, and the playlist is called live stream. Or, for instance, the stream of today, which is about Predator2, you also can find them back in the playlist of Predator2. Yeah, well, last week we did an interesting live stream about how I made pads with Bluetooth, and many people watched it also afterwards, and even somebody listed the things I did mention. Well, I can see we have some international people from the other part of the world in USA, from Chicago. Hello, broadcast music, and I can see Gad Bruins, which is from the Netherlands, of course. And yeah, well, today I posted on Facebook and in Twitter, you can ask questions about Predator2. It's of course a very deep synthesizer. Still very, very user-friendly in my opinion, compared to Bluetooth. Bluetooth is then even more deeper, but Predator2 is deep, but it's still also very user-friendly because many controls are visible. Yeah, can you can you talk about reverse engineering patches? Okay, that's the first question. That's a good idea, maybe. Yeah, what is reverse engineering, of course, and it depends which patch, of course. Now, I have made here a little beat, which is a bit trancy. It has some drums and a bass. And then I use this XY pad that moves, It's not really has a bit the impression as if there is a kind of sidechain, but the sidechain is done by essentially by modulation. And the XY pad, if you open the XY, you can see that the destination of the XY is the volume. So the XY here with the Y movement, and the Y movement is the up-down movement, is controlling the volume. So when I play now a chord, so the best way for reverse engineering, if you hear something, if there is any movement in the sound which you hear now, you definitely know that there is a modulation active. So for instance, I can hear the volume change, so I can check here in the modulation matrix if something is addressed, nothing is addressed. I can look in the envelope, LFO, or pitch bend modulation, or the envelopes. If there something is connected, nothing is connected. Then the other one which still remains is the XY. And here in the XY we can see there's the connection. Something is used on the volume. Okay, I need to check again the live chat. Yeah, how patches are made. Yeah, sometimes patches are made simply by editing the sounds, and then when personally, when I have a feeling that a sound is really saying something, has a kind of character, then I save it. So it's not always a process which is with a lot of thinking. It's the same when you play music. You're not always thinking. It's a kind of natural acting. You know which note you need to hit. And in terms of sound design, I know sometimes unconscious when I have to go somewhere to put some changes. So this sound, essentially, it is a pad sound. And the XY is connected to volume. So if I shut this now down, so when I double click this amount control, you see that here, double click, you see that's a steady sound. So if you have a sound and you hear a kind of movement, this movement in the sound is often an LFO or an envelope, or for instance in case of Predator2 it's the XY pad, and the XY pad is in play mode, so you see it has the movements here. I open the volume and you see that it changes the volume. Well, down here are some additional controls. It syncs to half a bar, so I also can say, okay, so let's sync it to 1/8. Then it's 8 bars, so it's a bit too long, of course. Let's make it shorter. Let's make it 1/4 note. Sync to 1/4 note. So you see it's a lot faster than what I just had, which was 1/8. So it starts again. Now I start to play. Now it syncs to 1 bar. So the XY pad is used now to change the sound. So if you reverse engineers, you need to look definitely also in the modulation section, which is, as mentioned, the modulation matrix, if something is happening there, in the envelope or LFO section, if something is connected, or in the XY. Of course, in the synthesizer itself, we also have a filter envelope and a volume envelope. Filter envelope is connected to the filter, so you have your filter sweep. You can hear a movement in the filter. Okay, I check again the YouTube. Oh, you mean a sound in a track? What somebody mentions that, I mean, I hear a sound in a track. How do you go about figuring out how to make an inspired patch similar to what you heard using Predator2 or any other of your synths? When I make my presets, of course, it's in general inspired on music. Sometimes you take a certain type of style and then you make presets. This is a bit of a trancey style of beat what I have now. So here, Predator, this one uses the bass sound of Predator and the arpeggiator. So I play it solo now. You can see the arpeggiator is playing. It's just one oscillator. It's a very typical saw bass, which is very often used in trance. One oscillator, simply playing a saw waveform, and it has a certain groove in the arpeggiator. And you see in the FX section only a mono delay is used and no other FX. So when I make this kind of beat and then I get into the groove, and then for instance this other sound which I play, this pad sound that I made simply by using this as a bass drums, and then I make this sound, which is this pad sound. And now I change it, of course, but I need to press up here the original, then it's again the original preset. So inspired on what they do in dance, which is a lot of side chaining. I don't use side chaining, but I use the XY pad to give the same affix to the pad sound, so this moving thing. And if you see such a pad, this is from the EDM and Dance 01 bank. You see Flumi side pad 09. So what you can do yourself is, if you take this pad, just play a chord and just go editing. You know, the Y controls the volume. And move the dots, or you can say, okay, let's also control the filter frequency, and the filter frequency, you could say take the X for it. So I take filters, assassination, frequency. So is this the X movement? One second, there's a modulation wheel which changes the filter. I put that off now. So you can hear that now the X modulation also controls the filter frequency. So the XY pad is really a fun part. You can address it to any parameter inside Predator2. So now not only it changes the volume but also the cutoff frequency. Or the other way around. You got a different character now. Yeah, and then you can change yourself the points here. You can see I make it visible. If you click here, edit, it makes the recording, the movement visible. And for these type of sounds, I take less points. The total amount of points can be 128. You can, that is here. Now I use 8 points, but essentially it can be 128 points. Of course, while editing, that's a bit too much. So in this sound, I simply use 8 and move them around to get this groovy stuff. So you can really make some different types of pad sounds with this sequence type of sound. So no sequence is playing, it's just the XY pad controlling the filter and the volume. Of course, if you work with this kind of preset, it's really also important to know that the XY has several modes. Poly, for instance, means that each note starts its own movement. So it's a more polyphonic movement. So you see multiple dots. I use in this patch, I use mono because each time I hit a note, it triggers again. Or you can use free row. And free mode means that it starts on the start of the start knob of your host program, and then it keeps on flowing. It doesn't reset anymore. So that's the free mode. So with this mode, you can experiment. Of course, it's different than sidechaining. You have a bit more options here, and you can do some different stuff. Because the XY is maybe a bit complex for you guys to work with, yeah, I can advise you just go to a few of these presets which are inside of it and see how things are done. Change the amount of timing, sync it to another beat, take less points, address it to another parameter, and you will find out that you can get some very interesting different sounds, which is different from sidechaining. Okay, I see more questions coming in. Could you talk about analog modeling circuits, how it's done? Yeah, essentially it's all DSP code, and the John Iris, which is the brilliant coder which works in me as together as a team making all the Rob Pappen products. It's all essentially done in the DSP code to get a certain sound. So we have analog drifting. If you go to the advanced panel, you can see we have analog drift, because if you see here my original Minimoog, that one has oscillators which are drifting. Digital, you can have the oscillator totally flat, and that's a bit less. Sometimes it's nice for FM type of sounds, but if you want to make some more analog type sounds, it's nicer to have the drifting. Okay, let's go to an example. I'm going to go to the introduction bank. Well, maybe this is a good example. This is a lead sound. I put down the FX now to make everything, so bypass it. 2 oscillators, and when I shut down the free running and also the analog drift, the sound is very... Oh, now there's a little modulation I can hear. Where is it? Not here. Oh, it's the detuning, of course, Rob. So analog drift is down, and when I have that one on C, 2 oscillators playing now without analog drifting. It still stays the same. And this is not how a Jupiter 8 or a Minimoog or any of the classic analog synthesizers work, because they are analog circuits and they always drift a bit because temperature, that kind of influences. So this I need to add to a product. So we call this analog drift, and when I open it a bit, you can hear that each note now is different. It starts to fade a bit, and especially if you have done a bit of detuning, you really get this warm analog sound, which is floating, and that's... Of course, it's finished off with a nice delay. Okay, so that about the analog model. Then we have different filter types, which type version 1 is more the Moog ladder filter type, and the other one, it's more which you can compare to what is inside of a Roland synthesizer. They sound both very different. So if this sound uses is a kind of simulation of a Minimoog sound. You see, I use type 1. When I go now to type 2 of the same low pass filter, you hear it's a bit different, more higher frequency. So it's essentially all in the code in the analog modeling. Okay, let's go to the next question. Yes, the XY is an advanced wave sequencer or op. Okay, somebody asked, could you talk about the different morph types and what they do to the sound? Yeah, sure. I mean, one of the new features inside Predator2 was this morphing between the 2 waveforms. So let's see. I can use this patch still. So you have a saw wave, and when I pick here morphing, when I put it on, mix for instance, then I can select a second waveform here on oscillator 2. So when I take a square, it mixes between the saw and the square. Morphing is more that it changes the harmonics. It's that there's an interaction between the harmonics. It's a bit different. It depends also on the waveform. So morphing is very similar to mixing, but it's with some waveforms it sounds a bit different. Then we have interpolate, also very similar. And low morph, it says the lower harmonics, or upper morph is the upper harmonics. And you can hear clearly that the lower morph and the upper morph are very different from the first ones, like mix. They really have a different character to it. Okay, let's make it dry. Shut down the FX on the right side. So then there is ring modulation. Then they modulate each other. Of course, they are on the same pitch, but it has also a kind of side effect to it. And of course, you have FM. So then the saw wave modulates the square wave. phase modulation and combine. So there are many types of morphing inside the oscillator possible. We have, of course, a few examples of these sounds. If you go to the transform sounds here, and actually this one uses a morphing between the 8 waveforms. Then it's a wave set. Then it morphs between the first wave and the 8 waves. That's an additional mode which it also has. Okay, let's see if we find more simple one, which yeah, here you can hear this one. Shut down. You have oscillator 1, Vox 2 and Vox 3. Now you see mix, and I see the XY move, and the XY, the X controls the morphing of 1. So it goes from this Vox 2 to Vox 3, but then done by using the XY pad. Okay, so if I would pick here, that's what you can do yourself, pick another waveform and just check out how that sounds. Or you pick a different morph type, so morph or interpolate. Or low morph, high morph, then remodulation, so yeah, there's a lot of things possible. It's good that if you see something moving, that you check the XY pad if it's connected to the oscillator waveform. So the different types of morphing, just go with the up or down or select one of the menu and just give it a try with one of the presets. Okay, I go back now to the what kind of waveform is best for the morphing? Yeah, of course. Yeah, it depends. It really depends. Sometimes, let me give you an example. In the ambient bank, hopefully I find it. I find it fast. Oh yeah, here it is. You see here it uses a wave set, and wave set means that you can scroll, so you don't morph from one wave to another wave, but you morph between a range of waveforms. And down here you can see them. These are wave 1 up to 8. And what I did here is simply, well, okay, let's go to the big screen of the user wave. You can click here on big screen, then you see the big screen where you have a lot of control. So what I can recall what I did with this preset is a little tones to its name. I select one preset of one waveform here, which is a sinus waveform. And then on number 8, I had also another one. And if I'm not wrong, it's... Let's see if I'm... Let's see to the partials. Okay, partials. It's... number 1. Well, partials are the single harmonics. So I can draw them here, as you can see. Okay, let's play only wave 8. So I use a wave and then only wave 8. Okay, well, I can select here a basic waveform. Well, these are organ waveforms. So I now load into Wave 8, I load this waveform. Let's see, these are the internal waves, which are also in your oscillator list. But there are also other waves. Bell. Okay, maybe it was this one. I'm not sure about it. But what I did here is I take a waveform on number 1 and a waveform, simple one, on waveform sinus waveform. So I start with a sinus waveform, and waveform 8 is a very complex one. Now here I can select them all together, so waveform 1 to 8, and then I click here, interpolate between selected waves. What now happens is that between 1 and 8, the program makes the waveforms in between. So when I go to 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you can see that essentially from user wave 1, it goes to waveform 8. So now you can make your own little wave table. So now again, I pick then wave set and then wave the range from 1 to 8. And I use now the XY again to morph from going from wave 1 to wave 8. This is indeed a wave table. You have 8 8 waves you can pick in the wave set. So you have in the oscillator, you have all the classic waveforms, then you got some spectrum waveforms, and then you got user waves, which are 8 waveforms you can select yourself, you can make them yourself, and a wave set. And in a wave set means that you can, with this dial, go from 1 up to 8, or you can say, oh no, well, let's make from 4 to 8. Or from 7 to 8, up to you. And now, because the XY is active, okay, let's shut it down. So now I go with the dial to the wave set. So you can do some very extreme things. Now the wavetable is very smooth because I let them pick between 1 and 8 as a morphing thing. Okay, how should I explain that? It's now essentially done by the engine, that it says, okay, interpolate between 1 and 8. But what I also can do is 1, I have the sinus. 2, I can pick this one. 3, I pick another waveform. I just pick random waveforms now. You see, and maybe scroll down more. Let's take that one. 6, this one. Okay, now. And then you can hear that between 1 and 8 are totally different waves. Can the can the resolution of the modulation of the table be changed? The resolution of the modulation. Well, there are different types. You see step limit, stepped, mixed. So that's the way it goes from one waveform to another. If the modulation is too deep, it stops. So it goes from 1 to 8 and doesn't go further. If it's not limited, it goes from 8 back to 1. So if you would have a, let's see if we can show this here. Okay, so in normal view. Okay, shut down the effect. I'll make it now the sound a bit drier. So these are the 8 waves. Now I use the XY for it. I open the morph. So now it stays with limit within this 1 and 8. If I use now a stepped without limit, then it goes, even if you have a very deep amount, it goes from 8 again to 1. So, and then there's this mix type, mix limit, or mix. A mix sounds different, of course. So then it mixes from wave 1 to 8. It's a bit smoother. Or you can say morph limit, which is a different. Yeah, and of course, yeah, well, these are these 8 waveforms. What we did is that you have down here this user waveforms where you can draw your own waves, load waves, and we have this big screen option where you have a lot of controls in making the waveforms. It's very deep what you can do. You have a lot of additional functions. Maybe when I have time again, I should make a really in-depth tutorial about this whole arrangement. Of course, you can use anything to change the waveform. So in some preset examples, I also did that. Wave sequencer, it's here. Let's see what happens here. Now the free row, you see there's different settings. For sure that one is now connected to the morph 1, so that controls now which of the 8 waveforms are playing. Now it's the same. Tempo is a bit high, maybe you should get half speed. Still you can make some very interesting, if you have a beat. So now without the morphing, just one waveform. Now the ARP3 controls which wave it is. Of course you don't see really the wave. You need to do this on setting, which is from 1 to 100. And it's just a matter of seeking the right groove with it. But essentially with the free row, you change now the wave set, which waveform plays at that moment. You can make some interesting sounds with that. Maybe it's a other one here. This one uses also sync, I can see, yeah, and a wave table thing. Okay, let's see if there's another waving waves. That's another preset in the Synth Bank 01. It's polyphonic, and now again the XY controls the morphing. Okay, let's see. Somebody did ask about a bigger XY. I'm not sure if that is needed. Predator2 is, of course, pretty much filled with a lot of features. Can PPG sounds be emulated? Yeah, sure. Okay, so yeah, the XY bigger. I'm not sure if that makes sense. You can record here the movement. Press edit. If you have too much points, you can make less points. It records in 128 steps, but for editing sometimes less is a bit handier. So then you can edit it here. There are also commands if you want to say, okay, I want to make a perfect circle, set to circle. Of course, then I have to make it 128 points again. So there are a lot of features. I did not have the impression that it needed a bigger XY while making all the presets. Well, somebody asked about the PPG sounds. Yeah, definitely that type of sounds can be made using Predator2. So it's a kind of combination of classic, traditional synthesizer sounds from the analog stuff, and of course also hybrid, because the original PPG or the Microwave 1, which is down here in my rack, is essentially hybrid. It has analog filters, and the waveforms were digital in the original PPG and Waldorf synthesizers. So this is Berlin voice. That's pretty much a PPG sound. Another one, this bell sound. This one changes, so that's going kind of wavetable thing, going from one. So pretty much, of course, we don't, you cannot import PPG or Waldorf type of things, because it has the same options, but it has, of course, different waveforms, and I'm not the guy of making remaking stuff which is already around. Of course, I'm inspired by this type of sounds, and it's a bit recreating of this typical PPG voice, which is this Berlin voice. That's why I call it Berlin voice. It's so it's really a very versatile synthesizer. I mean, or if you want to like some classic synth. It's also inside of it. So it has many directions, therefore you find so many presets inside the Predator2. Okay. Let's see if there is any other questions. Yeah, wavetable banks. Yeah, if you go, if somebody else would, sure, people can use and make their own waves. So the big screen here already offers wave sets, which are a set of eight waveforms: changer, jumpy one. These are mirage. So that's essentially, if I pick them here, a user wave. Okay, now I need to go to a default preset, of course. File, new preset. Make a default. So now it's the default. I pick here user wave 1. Now it's empty. You can make your own here. Now we have wave sets. You can here preset folder wave set. Then we have this one. Now of course I can pick mix and pick here wave 8. So this one goes from wave 8 to wave 8. Oh, I'm doing it wrong, sorry. Need to pick a wave set. Jumpy. So you can simply we have some wave sets on board, chord. But you can make them easily yourself. So if you go to a user wave number 1 here, you can pick one of the waveforms, internal waves. Okay, take this one. I pick, for instance, bass type, and you can edit it. You can load in another one on number 2 or interpolate between them. It's very easy to make your own wavetables. It's tons of options, and you simply then save your wave set. Save a wave set, you give it a name, and then you have your own wave set. Plenty of options to do here, and as mentioned before, I need to make really in-depth tutorial about waves inside the Predator2 and what you can do with it. What I also did do myself, I think they are now in, let's go back to wave 1, user wave 1. I think I analyzed, because it can analyze samples, a Jupiter 8 saw wave from this guy here. So there's also the saw wave from the Jupiter 8. And you can edit it and save that again as your own. Use the user wave as modulation source. Yeah, that's it's in the LFO. Okay, let's go back here. Normal view. I need to click here, normal view. Then I'm back on the main screen. You see this wave number 1. And if you go to the LFO, you can pick one of the user waves. So you also can make your own LFO waveforms. So so some more questions pop in. Is there any rec extension version? Well, no, it's not possible to get Predator2 in a rec extension, because rec extension have a particular size, and there are essentially too many pages in Predator2 to make it fit. So we have down here already the modulation, user waves, LFOs, the arpeggiator page, and then you also have the option, what I just showed is the big screen option for the waveforms, where you can draw all the waveforms yourself. Yeah, and here you can control it by partials. You can control all waves, all partials. Analyze, that's what you do if you load in a sample. You can analyze a sample. It's not easy to get a good waveform format, because you need to know the right tuning of it. But you can see there's a lot of additional features here. It's a very deep feature inside this synthesizer, making your own waveforms. Can I give each oscillator their own amp IDSR? Yeah, sure, that's possible. Essentially, that's a question. If you go to the manager and you go to the ambient bank. Okay, now I go to the ambient bank from the original Predator presets. You see classic synths, and I go down here, ambient 1. Synth, let's see. This one. Okay, shut down the FX, and this is FM synthesis. And with FM synthesis, you need envelope control. If we go here, envelopes, then I can see that this envelope number 1 is controlling volume 1 of oscillator 1. If I would not do this, it's okay, I shut it down, amount to 0. You hear a very high modulation of oscillator on oscillator 3. And the oscillator 1 is also shut down from going to the filter, so it's only modulating oscillator 3. Now I put it on, oscillator 1 modulates. Yeah, well, now you got an FX sound. I don't want to have that. I want to have this only as an attack. So then you need to have an envelope, and this envelope 1 controls the volume of oscillator 1. And then you get this kind of percussion sound. That's very great from so yes, you can simply connect that inside Predator2. So you can, if you want to have each oscillator their own envelope, you have 4 of them, so you have even 1 left. So that's possible. Well, somebody asks, on your complete control, what velocity setting do you prefer? I have the default setting, I must say. But when I play piano, that is not the right setting I notice. And then I use the original piano, the digital one, which is behind. But that depends also on the plugin. But I have the default setting on my keyboard, and that works nice. Okay, so Predator extremely deep in terms of features. Okay, let's see if somebody pops up another question. Okay, I'm checking if I missed maybe a question. Yeah, about the XY. Yeah, the size. Yeah, to make it bigger, you mean a bit like we do now with user waves, that you get a big screen. So maybe that could be an idea to have an additional XY. Although I myself did not need it for my feel, but yeah, sure. If many people demand it, we will have this maybe in the near future. Okay. Yeah, we have about 15 minutes left. Well, just ask a question, guys. I thought I had most of them now covered. I started this day with the modulation of this XY pad. So let's see if this patch is still be. I check here and it recently browse. Oh, I made so many patches that's already not in there. I used. Okay, some questions which pop up sometimes on our email or in support is how people can import or convert Predator1 presets. And of course, all the presets of Predator1 are inside Predator2. So the banks start with 001 with the introduction bank of Predator2. And if you go down, suddenly it starts with 101 introduction. Then from that point on, it goes to the Predator 1 presets. All are inside of it. So all FX here, 111, all FX are all ring modulation. So many presets on board, and therefore this star system is so nice. If you think, okay, this is a cool preset like this Skytrain, just hit it now. This one is nice. Listen to this one. Extreme, isn't it? Okay, so and the bank manager helps a lot. If you like the sound, give it a star, then you easily find it back. MS Pi 1, that's inspired on the MS-20, which is on the left side there. It's very old style FX sound using the LFO, and in this case the LFO, I think it's in here, and it's a uses on the semitone from the oscillator, and instead of a regular sinus, it's a square waveform. Yeah, the filter difference is inside Predator different compared to the old albino. The cream filter is more the type 1, what you can find inside of it, because I think that was also modeled alongside to the Moog system, and the second one is the silk one. So it's in that comparison. When I make pad sounds in Predator2, you can pick two type of. Let's see where it is. For instance, this pad sound. This one uses. No, that's the wrong one. Where is it? ambient. Yeah, I misplaced it somewhere. But it's not the pad I'm looking for. Maybe it's in the introduction bank. There, where is he? Where is he hiding? Sure, I should use myself the, here it is, mellow carpet. I did store it now, so next time I will find it. So if you listen to this pad, sounds very mellow. This one uses type 2, 12 dB. For pad sounds, 12 dB is great. If you check the last live stream I did about Bluetooth and making pads, I also talked about using 12 dB low pass filters for pad sound. So this is type 2, and let's play it now with type 1. See, type 1 is a bit more aggressive. Okay, go back to type 2. It's more mellow. With bass you also can hear it pretty much. So the filter types, even if it's called 12 dB, each has their own character. It's also, if you compare, biggest difference is on the left side. If you compare the filter from the Jupiter 8 with the Mini Moog, there's a huge difference in timbre, although both are having 24 dB low pass filters. This is type 1. Let's go to type 2. So that's really cool. If you have a preset, just take a different filter type. That often gives a different feel to it. I had this one, this dikke synth. It's Dutch for a fat synth. This is type 2. This is more analog stuff. So the type 2 is more mellow, and the type 1 is more aggressive in Predator2. Therefore, we added it. Yeah, most of the filter algos, for instance, the filter algos in Predator2 and Bluetooth are similar. Yeah, there are not much of difference. We work now on a new product, and that has a bit of different approach to it. Of course, I should not say anything about a new product. Anyhow, in about 2 weeks, note it down, check the live stream. You don't want to miss that one. The difference mainly in the Waveform products in terms of synthesis are the differences. So Bluetooth has far more FM synthesis, has a range of samples, and for instance, Raw does focus a lot of distortion. So the focus on each instrument is different, but we often use these same filter types because they are great and sounding great. Okay. I'm checking here the chat now. Yeah, yeah, indeed, they are very similar. Well, the filter types in, for instance, in Predator2 compared to RAW, they have two filter types of two filters, and they can used in serial mode. In here it is, the mode. Let's see it. Need to put it active, of course. But you can see here that we have the two filters. It goes into the low pass filter and then to the second filter, which is a notch type. So that's an interesting thing to inside Predator2. The second filter really adds a lot of additional options. Then there's this button 1 and 2, then you can control both at the same time, which is handy, of course. Then you can change both of them, the frequency. Filter 1. So let's see. So that's interesting. So each synthesizer has its own special things compared to the other ones, and each has its own focus. Of course, the Bluetooth is our most deepest synth because it combines FM synthesis, which is pretty complex, together with subtractive and a range of onboard samples. And Predator2 is essentially subtractive synthesis, but also with a very deep synthesis in terms of creating your own waveforms and working with that and the morphing. Okay. Good. Let's see what I had here. And of course the combination is always this one I had here. Let's see what I had as noise, if it still works. That's where I started with the XY pad, of course. That's of course one of the big power of Predator2. It's a powerful arpeggiator. Yeah, the easy page, that's of course also a part inside Predator2. You see all major controls. Essentially these are the most important ones. So you can change a bit the FX here, so bypass them. Or can say, okay, this sound is okay, but it's maybe a bit too long. You can make it shorter. The amp section, change the filters here, or make it long. So the easy page is always handy because sometimes you don't have to do major stuff to get a sound fitting to your song. So if I play this again, maybe you like this better than the original one. So I can up here, I can pick around the original one. Put off an oscillator. Okay, this is cool. Put a bit more delay. So I started here with this patch, the original one. Click here, was this. But I then shut down oscillator 2 and I had the sound which I wanted to have. Yeah, somebody asked about MIDI file. Yeah, some people did ask, that's already an old wish we did see regular is that people wanted to record the output of the arpeggiator so that they could edit it in their songs. But this means that Predator2 has to have a MIDI out, and that one needs to be connected again to the host. I need to check that with John Iris if that is possible to have this kind of feature. This would mean that you would play inside Predator. This is the arpeggiator, as I do now, and it would record the notes. So you really would see, instead of now only a chord, you really would see all the notes played. Of course, there are also MIDI. This is Cubase. It has a built-in arpeggiator which you can use, but people like, of course, the cool features inside the arpeggiator. Yeah, I definitely agree. John is magic. Without John Iris, there would be no Rob Hartman synthesizers. That's for sure. So, of course, I'm on the face, which you see very often, and I'm the man who has a lot of ideas. But if John doesn't code it, it will not happen. So, I mean, the XY pad idea to have that as a controller popped up. First time with Blade, but then it has to be coded, and John is great in that kind of stuff. So absolutely fantastic. Okay, guys, we had another hour of a live stream here, and again, you can check it out again in the live stream playlist. And I hope to see you next week again, next Thursday. Same time, and thank you guys for being here, and see you next time.